Pensacola, Florida. A member of the Saudi Air Force armed with a handgun fatally shot 3 people and injured 8 others on Friday morning during a bloody rampage in a classroom building at the prestigious Naval Air Station in Pensacola, Florida, where he was training to become a pilot. The authorities, led by the FBI, were investigating to determine the gunman's motive and whether the shooting was an act of terrorism. A United States military official identified the suspect, who was killed by a sheriff's deputy during the attack, as Second Lieutenant Mohammed Saeed al-Shamrani. He was one of hundreds of military trainees at the base, which is considered the home of naval aviation. 6 other Saudi nationals were detained for questioning near the scene of the shooting, including 3 who were seen filming the entire incident, according to a person briefed on the initial stages of the investigation. A group that monitors online jihadist activity said that shortly before the shooting, a Twitter account with a name matching the gunman's posted a will calling the United States a nation of evil and criticizing its support for Israel. The gunman was using a locally purchased Glock 45 9mm handgun with an extended magazine and had 4 to 6 other magazines in his possession when he was taken down by a sheriff's deputy, the person familiar with the investigation said. The shooting, the second at a Navy base this week, sent service members scrambling to lock the doors of their barracks or flee the base altogether. The attack by a foreign national inside an American military installation raised questions about the vetting process for international students who are cleared by the Department of Defense and is likely to complicate military cooperation between the United States and Saudi Arabia at a time when relations with the kingdom are already tense. In recent months, President Trump has held fast against bipartisan congressional efforts to rebuke his fierce support for Saudi Arabia and its de facto leader, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who has pressed for his kingdom to rise as a global player in international finance and politics. Mr. Trump said he had spoken on Friday with the prince's father, King Salman, who called to offer condolences and denounce the gunman's deadly violence. The king said that the Saudi people are greatly angered by the barbaric actions of the shooter and that this person in no way, shape, or form represents the feelings of the Saudi people who love the American people so much, Mr. Trump said at a small business roundtable in Washington. Khalid bin Salman, the Saudi Vice Minister of Defense, wrote on Twitter that military trainees including himself have trained on United States soil for years as American allies. Like many other Saudi military personnel, he wrote, I was trained in a U.S. military base, and we used that valuable training to fight side by side with our American allies against terrorism and other threats. The shooting shortly before 7 a.m. shook Pensacola, a city proud of its strong military history and teeming with veterans, including the sheriff. I'm devastated. We are in shock. This is surreal, Captain Timothy F. Kinsella Jr., the base's commanding officer, told reporters. The days ahead are going to be difficult when it finally sinks in what has happened here. The time of the attack likely coincided with morning muster and the start of daily classes. The classroom building would have been full of junior officers, including American student naval aviators and student naval flight officers. It was not known whether the 6 Saudis detained were students in the classroom building, and there was no immediate indication that those filming the incident were connected to the gunman, according to the person familiar with the investigation. The Twitter posting cited by the site Intelligence Group, which monitors jihadist activity, included 3 typed messages posted hours before Friday's shooting. Your decision-makers, the politicians, the lobbyists and the major corporations, are the ones gaining from your foreign policy, and you are the ones paying the price for it, it said. Site said the posting quoted the former Qaeda leader, Osama bin Laden. Law enforcement officials did not confirm the authenticity of the account. Streets were shut down all along the perimeter of the base, and traffic was paralyzed as ambulances and patrol cars raced toward the scene. The base, which employs more than 16,000 military personnel and 7,400 civilians, remained on lockdown with slow evacuations underway throughout the day. Jeff Burgish, an Escambia County commissioner and a facilities management contractor for the base, said emergency vehicles had roared past him as he pulled up to the main road that leads to the gate on Friday morning. Alarms were going off. He contacted his employees inside, who said they were safe and confirmed what Mr. Burgish had feared: it was not a drill. More than an hour later, Mr. Burgish entered the base with other county officials, and they made their way to the scene of the shooting. He saw blood and spent casings. Emergency medical workers had been treating the wounded. A helicopter was on hand for evacuations. Among the 8 injured were 2 deputies who were shot, one in the arm and one in the knee, but were expected to recover. 2 victims died on the base, and the other at Baptist Hospital. Their identities have not been released. Pentagon officials found themselves investigating the second shooting on a military base in less than a week. On Wednesday, a United States sailor opened fire at a dry dock at Joint Base Pearl Harbor-Hickam in Oahu, Hawaii, fatally shooting 2 shipyard workers and injuring another before killing himself, the authorities said. That attack came as that installation was preparing for the 78th anniversary on Saturday of the Japanese attack that marked the United States' entry into World War II. In a statement on Friday, Defense Secretary Dr. Mark T. Esper said he was considering several steps to ensure the security of our military installations and the safety of our service members and their families. The base at Pensacola, on Florida's Panhandle, dates to the 1820s and is where the Navy's Blue Angels flight demonstration team is based. Since World War I, most Navy and Marine Corps aviators and flight officers have begun their flight training there. Captain Kinsella said that about 200 international students are currently in training. Weapons are not allowed on the base other than for security personnel, the captain said. The gunman was believed to be enrolled in the base's aviation pre-flight indoctrination program. Students in the training hail from countries such as France, Italy, and Norway, in addition to Saudi Arabia, which began sending trainees to the base in 1995. The Saudis usually train to fly either helicopters or F-15s, according to a Navy pilot familiar with the program. There are often a couple of foreign students in a class of 15 or so. Americans and Saudis go through their initial training together before branching off for separate training programs. Dania Lemoyne, 26, a former Marine sergeant who lives about a mile and a half from the base, said that until earlier this year, she worked as an avionics instructor in the building where the shooting took place. Messages on her phone about an active shooter woke her up on Friday, followed by texts from former colleagues inside the Naval Air Training Technical Center, which she described as a 2-story building about the size of a hangar. "We have an active shooter and I think it is a foreign national that did it," one text said at 7:15 a.m. Ms. Lemoyne said people inside had told her they sheltered in their locked classrooms, as they had been taught. As a young instructor, she said she had taught maybe over 100 foreign students from Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan, and Spain. She dealt with those students differently from her younger American students. Most of the foreign Middle Eastern students were officers, she said, and answered to a different command structure. They are a little bit more mature, Ms. Lemoyne said. We don't treat them the same we would treat an 18-year-old student coming from America. Still, she added, I would not talk about deployments to Afghanistan or about things going on in politics. You are walking on eggshells with that whole topic. Representative Matt Gaetz, a Republican whose congressional district includes Pensacola, said he was convinced, based on what he had been told, that the shooting was a terrorist act, although he declined to say what led him to that belief. I've had some discussions with law enforcement on the ground, and my assessment after those discussions is that this is unequivocally an act of terror, he said. Senator Rick Scott of Florida, also a Republican, said the attack should be considered terrorism, regardless of the gunman's motivation. Both lawmakers called for reviewing future vetting of future foreign military trainees. The fatal attack could hardly have come at a worse time for Saudi Arabia. Since his father became king in 2015, Prince Mohammed has struggled to rebrand Saudi Arabia as open to the world and a key partner of the West in fighting extremism. The kingdom is on the cusp of selling shares of its oil monopoly, Saudi Aramco, an initial public offering expected to be the world's largest, and is preparing to assume the presidency of the G20, whose summit it is scheduled to host next year. Early enthusiasm for Prince Mohammed and his promised reforms had already been tarnished after the kingdom's disastrous military campaign in Yemen and the killing of a Saudi dissident writer, Jamal Khashoggi, by Saudi agents in Istanbul last year. But the kingdom appeared to be trying to move on. Even if the authorities find no international terrorism connections to the Pensacola shooting, the attack could undermine how the kingdom is perceived abroad, and especially in the United States, where many remember the presence of several Saudi nationals among those who attacked the World Trade Center and the Pentagon on September 11, 2001. One wild card for the Saudis is Mr. Trump, who anointed Prince Mohammed a key player in his plans for the Middle East and stood by the prince when anger over Mr. Khashoggi's death grew in other parts of the United States government. If the new killings, this time of Americans, tars the kingdom in Mr. Trump's eyes, it could leave Saudi Arabia with few remaining friends in Washington. My guess is that it will not have much impact, said F. Gregory Gause III, a Saudi expert at Texas A&M University's Bush School of Government and Public Service. People already suspicious of the Saudis, including lots of members of Congress, will see it as further proof that there is something wrong with the country, Mr. Gause said in an email. Those more inclined to see the country as a useful if sometimes difficult partner in American foreign policy in the Middle East will see it as the random act of a deranged individual. Kaylin Wolf reported from Pensacola, Florida, Patricia Mazzi from Miami, Eric Schmidt from Washington, and Christine Hauser from New York. Reporting was contributed by Ben Hubbard from Beirut, Vivian Yee from Medina, Saudi Arabia, Nicholas Bogelburrows and Liam Stack from New York, and Adam Goldman and Thomas Gibbons-Neff from Washington.